Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. Today is Friday, July 25th. It's the third day, of the Chargy birthday. I've yet to do the morning sitting. I will do that in a moment, and then I'll probably add another voiceover to this. And so there'll be one more sitting to go. Last night's sitting was just sublime. Just throughout the energy, the whole gathering. I had a very, intense dreams last night. One involved my brother, who I saw in a weird interaction just before I woke up. And I went and I was talking to my brother, and it's maybe like a gathering type situation, and maybe there's something wrong with my bathroom or something. I don't know, like I was staying in a cottage. There's like a lengthy thing that happened before that, and I can't remember all that. I remember it being like very vivid stuff, but it was a prolonged kind of situation. But I saw my brother, I think multiple times, and I went up to him and I said he looked 20 years younger. And then we had this exchange, and I said, "You look good." And he goes, "Yeah, I look, I feel like I'm 20 years younger." And I said, well, I wouldn't say that. I would say you haven't looked this good in 20 years. And I said, "Are you in love?" And he gave a vague answer, and then I woke up. My brother and I haven't talked because of him being a dodgy person. And, that old thing. And I can't emphasize how good the sitting was yesterday. Like, just sublime. So this was a fourth sitting. And there'll be two more. And, the heartfulness thing is over. And I had a Whispers of the Writer World. Let me read that first here. So there are a series of messages from the Venerable merging with the medium for about 2 months. And then Babaji's messages reemerged. This is Sunday, June 11, 2000. My son has more people around him than you. In spite of that, he is alone and tired. The load is heavy, and human beings, sometimes staff, suffers from not being able to solve everything, to do more, so that the mission can expand and structure itself faster. Your heart is moved by his weariness because you experience it as well for other reasons. All your good thoughts cannot but touch him. It is true that many influential thinkers of your time, considered as such by the elite, have been and are on the wrong track. They impress false concepts on the minds of many individuals. Their own reasoning will perhaps bring them back to reality. Human need points of reference. They follow in the footsteps. They don't necessarily lead them where they must go. One day, matured by their own experiences, they discover their misjudgment and stop at crossroads in search of a way forward that is better suited to their state of mind. And sometimes this necessary journey has a long time to understand the true aspiration of which is called the soul, and then everything is to be done or redone. Babaji. So I was listening to that talk by Chargy, and I've never heard of it. It's an interview. There was a woman, and I can't remember her name, and I wouldn't be saying it here anyway, but I don't know what it is. But she, and I remembered it 2 days ago, but then I forgot it. And I interacted with her a little bit, and she was doing videos. And she was asking Chargy questions, and sometimes Chargy, I'd almost correct some of the statements she made. And I know that she was maybe considered a difficult person in some ways to work with. She was living there in India when I was there. Like I said, I knew of her. My ex had worked with her or something, and there was some kind of, and I don't remember everything about it. But listening to him answer the questions, like this is again a video I hadn't seen, but some of the things he said that, they're repetitive things. They're said in a different way. But he was talking about Westerners quite a bit. And, the Westerners all presented a big problem because they had, they didn't have we didn't grow up with, and Westerners, I mean Europeans and Americans, we don't grow up with the guru culture. Like, only India has the real guru culture. And they represent a huge problem as well because they don't think for themselves. And that's totally evident with the dodgy stuff, where they, or just the whole enmeshment of their culture and all this stuff. So, there's a couple of things here, right? Um, that are a parallel process, I think, as you would call it. But even though they have this guru thing, right? That they grow up with it. Chargy was all alone. And the people didn't, they were always doing their own wrong things. I'm open to the idea, and I'm, the possibility of some sort of community. But I, know that people don't listen to me, right? Like, people don't listen to me. And not me personally. Like, they don't listen to the part of me that when divine knowledge comes through me, they don't listen to it, right? When I'm shown things by God and I say whatever I say, people don't listen to it. And that's not anything to do with me personally. Like, this is something I know. Like, I'm not being judgmental because, I struggled with it with Chargy. We all know what to do. And I always feel like I did the right thing in the end. But it's when, choices had to be made. But it's a moment-to-moment choice. And we're given the godly choice moment to moment, and we all struggle with making that choice, making the right choice. We might come to it later on. But people have their own agendas and their own whatever bullshit stuff that they believe in. And that's stronger than their ability to listen to God. And, and they just go and do their thing or whatever. And so, no matter what you say, you can't, influence them to do the right thing or just take the right attitude, and it played out so much, and I'm sure that it wore Chargy down, wore Babaji down, wore Jesus down, wore Buddha down, wore Krishna down, any saints, any spiritual person. And, all those people had their own human times as well, their immaturity. Like, you grow into something, right? You're not born a spiritual master, as Chargy said. You haven't mastered yourself. You get to the point where you master yourself, but you've made all those human mistakes along the line, along the way. And so, I'm very aware of this. It's my hesitancy to get involved with the community because, like, there was this, story where, Lalaji wanted a cup of coffee, and some guy was so in tune with him. Lalaji had about 200 or so and associates. They don't call them followers. People that he was training spiritually. And the guy showed up, and he was living in northern India where it's always tea. They don't have coffee as much there. And, Lalaji didn't drink coffee regularly. And this guy had some coffee, and he came to his house. No conversation was had. He just sensed that Lalaji wanted coffee. Lalaji woke up, or was, getting ready to, start his day, like early in the morning. And the guy showed up at his house with a cup of coffee, right? And Chargy heard that story and said, well, why didn't that guy become Lalaji's successor? And Babaji said the famous saying that many people can emulate themselves. A moth can emulate itself in a warm flame, which would mean it would fly into a light bulb and die. But only a special moth can emulate itself in a cold flame. And he was talking about how Babaji was so in tune with Lalaji after he died. And this guy was in tune with him before he died. But the awareness of what the so-called master needed, this person, in the embodiment of the divine master needed. This is a famous story in the My Master book. But people, I mean, they just don't want to cooperate. And, I saw it over and over again. That even these higher developed souls that had been around, maybe disciples of Charji and Babaji in past lives, many of them, all of us who are chosen for Sahaj Marg, this is a part of our destiny, and we all struggled. And they caused lots of problems. People just cause problems. Some of it's cleaning, but some of it is just, not having the proper attitude. And we see it. I cover it every day with the news and things I cover on my normal channel. People just are not oriented in their best self-interest and, connected to their spiritual self, even the ones who work at it. And then many people are resisting it, like without even the whole idea of it. They resist the idea of divinity. Lots of people practice religion, don't really believe in God, or don't really want to have a relationship with God or whatever. And then there's the people who are not even, doing anything in terms of religion. They don't believe anything. They don't think about God. They don't think about their soul. They're just mired in their material existence and floundering. People are just doing really poorly right now. And so, and there's just nothing that can be done. It's just, and, this thing that happened with the Dodgy thing, I wanted to talk about that also with this. Dodgy making the Chargy birthday one day, and I don't know if he's doing this to. I don't think he did it with Babaji. He said he was going to cancel that Babaji came to him and canceled the gathering. The two middle gatherings. So there'd just be a Lology one and a Dodgy one, and there's all these whispers messages that say how important these gatherings are, and everyone knew how important they were. They were just these points where you would do better. It would help you rise to a higher level, and you would retain that for some period of time, even if you didn't go to India and with Charji. But it was like these things that happened. People would celebrate them, do the meditations and, meditation centers, ashrams, and people's homes, preceptors' homes, and things like this. Like they were just these, you get these boosts, these like a spiritual booster shot kind of thing. And they just carried you through the rest of the year, and they're just really important. The meditations and the transmission and people's ability to connect with it were special on these days, which I've talked about in previous, videos. And Dodgy came out because he just wants to cancel Chargy's birthday for whatever reason. And so this was the first time he did one day. I don't think I only pay attention to, the way he treats Chargy on his birthday, because I don't care about the, heartfulness debacle anymore. I care about this, that, it's like still a little bit of a bummer when I think about it. But, what I wanted to say about this is, like, when you wanted to travel to India to go to a gathering, like some people would travel most people would travel specifically for these holidays, these birthday celebrations, these bandaras. And if it was 3 days, you would, you'd go to India for 2 weeks, right? And so it's a hot time of the year now. Like it's just, the Babaji's and Charji's birthdays it's kind of the worst time of the year. That's the heat of the summer. The heat of India being hot, unbearably hot. That, people just wouldn't travel then. Like the best time to travel is people would go often in September and October and, November. And then the rainy season might kick in too. So that's, whatever that is. But, people just couldn't handle the heat. And, from Europe and America. But they would travel to these birthday gatherings. So, and you had air conditioning and whatever. Babaji's, I think, is where it's I think it's the hottest in like April. And then there might be some rains and things, whatever, in July. I don't know. It's just, but everybody went to Charji's birthday because he was a master of the system and whatever. And they're still doing that, after Charji died. But if it's one day, it's not like worth going in the heat of the year for people. And I just think people are probably not even traveling there anymore because it just sucks so bad. Like, I don't know what all these, I wasn't I mean, I'm Facebook friends with a few of these people still, but I don't know what the whole thing is, right? Overall, like how they feel about Dodgy's being a piece of shit and the rest of it. Like, I know they're not posting shit about him on Facebook, the ones that I'm still friends with. There was this Ukrainian girl I think I talked about in a recent video that she had posted weird New Age stuff that she was doing. She was around Chargy. Chargy was going to marry her off and arranged a marriage. I think she arranged a marriage to an Indian guy, and the family rejected, and then he arranged another marriage to an Indian guy, and that marriage failed. And I talked to her a little bit, and she was with this friend, and the friend was either Russian or Ukrainian, and they were always, hanging around Chargy's place, and the other one got married to an Indian guy. She has a couple of kids. Once in a while, I see some photos from her family or whatever. But they were, two younger, Russian, Ukrainian women, whatever. Maybe they were both Ukrainian. I think they both came from money. But the one had posted some weird New Age shit. Like, I don't know what it is. Like, I just had seen it. And then she had just posted pictures about Chargy, and I guess it was in English because I read some of it. Because she said Chargy was her master. And I'm like, I don't think that she's doing Sahaj Marg anymore. Chargy's gone. And I don't know how many people have just quit over the thing or doing something else, right? But Chargy, Dodgy making it one day. If you're traveling from other parts of India, and you're not supposed to be traveling from other parts of India, it's just for local people. So I don't even know if they let you come to the ashram. And I don't know why you would. The sittings suck. But, it would be a 4-day thing. You'd go there maybe a day early and maybe, whatever. Maybe a couple days early. So, people would be at the ashram for an extended period of time. And the energy at the ashrams was amazing. And, and people maybe even travel there for a week or 2 weeks, depending on, what their work schedule was. And so it's a whole thing. And I know that with one day, he's made it so people aren't going. And the local people aren't into Chargy as much. That area, it's really the people from Chennai. And I don't know if the Chennai people are ever going to have their own gathering in Chennai ashram. It used to be the headquarters. And, I don't know. Like, this all that stuff. But either way, they should all know. Like, they should all know he's trying to erase Chargy. So fucking obvious. And, like, Chargy did so much for so many people. And he was so work-oriented and sacrifice-oriented and just traveled and made time for people and, worked on them spiritually and answered their letters and, just did all kinds of, like, whatever. And I know Dodgy's not doing that because he's a selfish prick and he's not embraced the whole thing. And he's not really a master, so it doesn't even matter if he did. But, like, I don't know. Like, again, each person has their own, path and their own whatever decision making to make. And I'm not in contact with any of those people and the whole thing. But I could just say that what we're doing here with Gratefullness is just amazing. And just, the meditations and the energy and the sittings and, and it's, like that's so important. And and it doesn't even have to be like a gathering. I mean, for me, it doesn't certainly now because this was like totally a gathering. Like this is the most gathering of the ones that we've had, even though it's just, me and my wife meditating here and, and going about our business and, not really taking time off, doing work and dealing with like whatever in our lives. When we were gathering, you would just go and you would just focus on this and you would be around other people and you'd be saturated in the energy, which is certainly superior in various ways, but this has been like almost as good in different ways. You had to fill your time and, during the time that wasn't the sittings and like at a gathering and people would sit there and gossip or, any number of, like you just had time to fill. And cleaning would go on, and you would be uncomfortable and all these things, right? Like Chargy was talking about in this, this talk about how Western people would be healthy and strong and all these things, but they come to India and they drink a little bit of water and get diarrhea and fall apart because they are used to purified water and climate control. And he goes, the temperature goes up and they just fall apart. He said they're weak and and you have no immune system and you're not, you're all pampered and and just like can't stand any discomfort. And he just went on about it for a bit, about the Western, which is everyone knew that was the case. The Western people have been trained to have so much comfort that especially like Americans, but Western people in general, they could tolerate the difficulties of life, right? And these gatherings were very much uncomfortable. And Babaji, particularly people went to Babaji's house, and it was, he talked about his initial meeting with Babaji and how the place was, um, you know, uh, dirty. Like his house was like filthy. Like this guy Don Savern said that Babaji built this little building for Western people to come, and it seemed to like be a little bit more comfortable than what people were used to. And people would come from foreign countries to stay, and Babaji was so proud of it. And he said it was just like dirty all the time, and like they cleaned it up, and they there's dust and stuff in the floor and all these things. And the people that were there from Europe, and he was from Canada, and these people all cleaned it up, swept it, and mopped it or whatever they could. He said windows, there was windows with no windows, so it was just like these open. He said the wind blew in and it was dirty again, like within half hour. Like in charge, he said there's bugs and like and Babaji was so small and uneducated and not very verbal, was not a good communicator, and really wasn't someone that could he just wasn't. But everyone kind of knew this about Babaji. He was shy of people, and he was not all that articulate in terms of his ability to express himself verbally, and all these things. And Charji was like, how can this guy be a guru? And he said, I would have left if I could have, and if I did, I would have had a nice life, been a really rich man, a lot of bad habits, maybe drinking, smoking, whatever, but he stayed there. And then he just realized one day that Babaji was like this divine being. Like he wrote about this in his book My Master. But had he not, like, he didn't, like, he rejected it. It was like, I was this little guy, Babaji weighed like 100 pounds and, uneducated and, all these things. And Charji couldn't, like, accept him. And, later of a talk, he would say that he was better at Babaji than in every aspect of life except for spirituality. And for that, he came and fell at his feet, as a guru. And so, I'm going to get ready to meditate here, and then I'll finish the end of this voiceover. But it's just the state of humanity. Like and I feel so great about the the transmission cleaning is so available, but the state of humanity is just not good. Anyways, let me go do the meditation, then I'll finish this voiceover. Okay, so I just got done with the fifth sitting. One more sitting to go tonight. Again, it's Friday, July 25th. Very intense sitting. So last night I realized that I more than likely have a tooth infection. I talked about this about a month ago. It's not getting worse. I have a dentist appointment with my normal dentist on Monday, and one on Thursday for the possibility of Invisalign, because my bite has changed, and it's occasionally my bottom tooth sitting my top tooth, which is a problem, in a way that it shouldn't. And I went to bed a little bit worn out. My wife's having a little bit of a health issue as well, like small things. But, I just kind of felt bummed out. Like, not, and the gathering's going great, and the sittings are going great, but I would say bummed out, just drained. And I read that message about Charji, and I thought about, he's watching that video of him. He's just always trying to help people. Babaji never confronted people about their stuff. He, he would talk like if it was a circle of people, he'd turn and talk to somebody vaguely about one of the other people's problems without, mentioning the person, and, in a very subtle way that he'd hope the person would pick up on it. Because if he directly confronted them, they would just resist it, and it wouldn't have the desired effect. And the Babaji was constantly, I think, shocked because of his state of being, how low people would sink, like what people were capable of in terms of depravity. And he just really didn't get it, and he was sort of very innocent and childlike in ways, and in a spiritual way, and he was very was disappointed, I think, in the stuff that people did, and it was a whole thing. And and I can see that, of course, with Chargy, and then what's happened since he died. And and I've gotten older now, and I was just kind of like, I was really enjoying the cities and the gathering, but I'm like having to deal with this thing now, post gathering. And so going into this sitting, it was a little bit chaotic here. Some stuff was going on, in terms of my wife having her issue, and my whatever, my health thing. And so it was a very intense sitting, but it's a lot of cleaning, and something like was pulled out of me at the end, like very, like forcefully, which I think maybe partly had to do with the fear of death. I was thinking about my brother, who he really didn't like being sick. Like, I'm much better at being sick or having health issues than he did. And, we talked about, like, and he's always a very restless person. And I was thinking when I woke up with a dream, I was wondering if he was dead or he was, I don't know, like what was going on with him. It was a weird thing. But I know that he won't do well. He's 17 years older than me, so he's now 78, and so he's getting into the 80s. And he was, mentally, because I was thinking about this also, that he would repeat the same stories oftentimes in a conversation, in the same conversation. And so he was mentally not there. And and he was only in his, maybe not that 70s is still something, but, I'm like, I won't be able to do this job in that many years because, if I'm like that, like if my mental state is where his was, like he still was, he was still, he wasn't like having dementia or something, but he would repeat the same stories, and, it wasn't really much there of value what he was saying to me. Like I was more just being there for him, and then the whole thing with Daji happened, and I just felt it was better when we didn't have contact, because I knew he would just, we couldn't really get along with my view of Daji and his view, and the whole mission thing. But either way, but I went into the sitting, and I was like, oh, this is a cleaning sitting, and it was kind of deep, but it was intense, and then the thing got removed at the end. And so I feel kind of good, about that. But, overall, like in this also, just to mention this, so I put out this idea that there could be a possible community-type neighborhood thing. And a bunch of people responded, like 5 or 6, not a bunch, but some. And I sent them all a voiceover. And of the people I sent a voiceover, only 2 responded. And if you haven't gotten the voiceover, if you're listening to this, but none have acknowledged that I sent them something. There was no acknowledgement to the email, and I asked for something to do with social media. And only one person did it, and one person said they were going to do it, to form some sort of a group. And the other people didn't respond at all. And so, which I don't care if they're not interested anymore, which is, it's better for both of us if I know, whatever. But if, I don't know if now do I have to go back and send them a follow-up email and say, did you get my email? Like, I don't want to do that shit, right? So just have the courtesy to say I received your email and whatever, and it's not for me or whatever. I don't care. Like it's just but I mean like just whatever. This is what I'm talking about with people. It's and I don't know how people react to the voiceover or what I was saying. I don't know what it was, but now I have to deal with like that kind of stuff. That happened like a couple days ago. But what I'm kind of saying here is, I'm very consciously aware that people are just doing really badly. Like, that doesn't mean that there can't be a turnaround later on. Like I said, when there's life, there's hope. And, as long as people are around and there's this transmission and cleaning. But once this goes, and I had another sort of exchange with somebody else about this, and I, just not having a clear perspective of what's going on. The gratefulness meditation thing that we're doing here is dwindling. Like it's, so many people started, and so many people, started with heartfulness and continued on. And then, over time, just like with my channel, it's shrinking. Like it's not growing, it's shrinking. Like my channel is shrinking, and the amount of people doing the gratefulness meditation is shrinking, and it's not expanding. And so, Sahaj Marg was always expanding very a slow rate here in America, and I'm sure that heartfulness is doing the same. And so, and heartfulness is nothing. That's not even like it's just, it's an abomination, it's a perversion of what Sahaj Marg was, and it's just all I mean, it has no value. And so, only that there are people in there that are good people, saintly people, whatever. But it's a downtime, right? It's not like things either grow or they shrink, and it's dying. And whatever I'm able to do with gratefulness meditation, keep it going, and whatever people that end up doing the meditation, and I don't know if there's some small gatherings in the future or not. I mean, still there's these online gatherings that are there. And, each person has to, I mean, it works for them to whatever extent. But, like it's just, that's the way it is. It's there's nothing I can do about any of that stuff. At the same time as our country's imploding, and the predictions and prophecies are, seem to be right on track for what's going to happen next, and all of it. And so, like I had these blissful sittings. I was really feeling good about the gathering. Then I went through some cleaning today, and then there'll be one more sitting tomorrow or tonight, and then that'll be that for this one. But very intense, like it's like a real like a real Sahaj Marg gathering, and that's like that's, I guess, out of all these things, there's hope there. So I did a couple voiceovers that were up on my regular channel. I'm going to include those here. They were done yesterday, but they'll fall under this whole category of day 3. And then I'll do a follow-up video after the sitting. Tomorrow I'll do one more video. There's always like a day 4 video, the post-gathering video after the sitting tonight, and then whatever I'm feeling tomorrow. And then this all go up in the journey series tomorrow, and then it'll be there for people. But again, this is, the things, gatherings are intense, and there's changes that happen. Like things, you come out of gathering, and you're in a different trajectory. Like just things have shifted, and we'll see what that means. Like I just, it's just about keep on checking the box, and keep on, fighting the fight. And, despite the circumstances, and that's all anybody can do. All right, so here are the other voiceovers. Okay, so I have a couple of comments to respond to. I'm also going to put this in my journey series, and possibly the thing on gratefulness meditation. I don't know. It's happening during the gathering, so I guess that'll be the case. So somebody writes here, God hates liars and hypocrites,
I wonder why all the evil slime want to be immortal. I wonder why all the evil slime want to be immortal Robo-Men. They know the afterlife will be absolute hell for them. Um, you know, the God that most people believe in is a bullshit God. I mean, everybody believes in a bullshit God because our capacity to understand God is very limited, right? Our capacity to understand God is, I don't even understand or feel or know God, whatever it is, right? Know God is probably the know God or working to emulate God, to be like God, right? Not in a narcissistic way, but in a service oriented way, right? In a loving way, to make our heart like God's heart. And God doesn't hate. Like, I mean, it's a very primitive idea of God if you think God hates. Like, you have a very primitive understanding of God. And that's a lot of that comes from Christianity and Islam and Judaism, especially Judaism, the Old Testament, where God is wrathful. Because if God is, if everything's been created from God, I mean, it says this in the Old Testament that God created the earth in 7 days. Of course, that's not what actually happened, but the idea is there that God created everything. And if God's creating everything, then he's creating it from himself. And so everything that exists in the universe is God and comes from God, and it's created from God as its based, as at its base. And so that means God would have to hate himself, right? The idea that God is love means that God can't hate. That, despite whatever we do, God doesn't hate us, right? We hate ourselves, right? We want to punish ourselves. We want to hurt ourselves. We want to sabotage our lives and our, whatever it is, right? That's what we do. And that has nothing to do with God. God doesn't punish. We punish ourselves. We do things that knowingly cause us pain and suffering. If you get stung by a bee and then you walk out and stick your hand in a beehive and you're like, why'd you do this to me, God? God must hate me, right? And God would say, no one told you to stick your hand in the beehive. That was your choice, right? People do things all the time to make themselves suffer later on. Tuesday Paul screwing over Thursday Paul, right? We screw ourselves over. We're setting ourselves up for bad shit in the future. Smoking cigarettes and then getting lung cancer. Drinking alcohol, then getting cirrhosis of the liver. Eating carcinogenic foods and then getting cancer. I mean, doing painful things, doing things that are going to cause problems for us later on. Going towards people that we know are bad for us and then suffering the consequences, right? So, there are consequences to our behavior, but it's not because God hates you. And so that part, the middle sentence, I wonder why all the evil slime want to be immortal Robo-Men. They know the afterlife will be hell for them. You don't know what the afterlife is going to be for you. It's just based on some bullshit religion that promised you shit you don't know about. Like, if you don't connect to the divinity within you, you don't have any sense what's waiting for you in the afterlife. You can prepare for death right now. The kingdom of heaven is within. That's a saying from teaching from Jesus. If heaven's within you, you can experience it right now. I've experienced blissful spiritual conditions that, would be a part of the afterlife, would the etheric world, right? But if you're not in contact with the etheric world and you're flying blind right up to when you die, believing a bunch of liars and cheaters who sold you a bag of shit, right? About what's happening to you in the afterlife. Like, nobody fully knows what's going to happen to them. And you can't keep account of all the things that you did and how you're going to have to, all the decisions you made, good, bad, and ugly, and how they're going to help or hurt you in the future. But you can work now to certainly make your death easier and more beneficial. I mean, in terms of the value of your life as it contributes to what happens after your life ends. And certainly there's some people who are working to fuck themselves over in future lives, where other people are working to have a more glorious afterlife. So, those things are all true. But who are you to fucking judge when you think God hates, right? Like I'm not, you got a very remedial understanding of what God is, right? And not that, I'm an expert because we're all just trying to figure it out. But I know more than that shit. Like that's just bullshit stuff religions told you. You're not really talking about God there. You're talking about people hate, right? God doesn't hate. And then so somebody writes and says, so we can't uncorrupt the system? 5 question marks. Then we are done. Can we get rid of Supreme Court, overturn Citizens United, call a sex predator, and impeach? Well, like I said earlier in this video, this is my entire time covering this stuff and watching the news and being a part of whatever the mainstream culture and politics. The only time that something big happened where someone was held accountable in my life was Nixon, and he was impeached, and that was still not that bad. Like he didn't go to jail. A few other people, but like I said, earlier, there wasn't, that doesn't exist anymore. And people aren't embarrassed or ashamed anymore. So there is no accountability. People don't have standards, don't have morals, don't have ethics. People don't have any personal power. The people together don't have collective power. You have the power of being a consumer, but no one's going to boycott. You really don't have any leverage. And the people running the system know it. And they have been boxed in by the fact that the system's collapsing and they don't have so many choices either. And so, this is like all this stuff is tied together, right? When a system goes south in a way like this, where there's no checks and balances, there's no control, and people just are doing horrible things and not feeling guilty, not having empathy, not being embarrassed, not being ashamed, not worried about prosecution or persecution, not worried about, anything else. There's no rule of law for lots of people with power and even those without. And so, like, it just becomes more and more people just making wrong decisions with no sense of a spiritual consequences for their behaviors. And then the system just goes south completely and collapses, right? It should collapse. Like, what would make you think the system's worth saving? If you're being honest, other than we're dependent on it, other than our lives would suck, our material lives would suck, what in this system's worth saving? What in this system's worth redeeming? And so, this is just, I don't know, everyone just needs to think about these things, like practically, right? Let me wrap this one up here. Okay, greetings, brothers and sisters. So, this is a time for a spiritual gathering in my meditation that I do. And some of you guys kind of know the story or some of it about how the meditation I do, the Sahaj Marg Natural Path Meditation, became the Heartfulness cult with this clown named Dodgy. I don't even want to call it a cult because it's too stupid and too incompetent. It's a wannabe cult. It's like an embarrassing attempt at a cult, which is, but you have the same phenomenon that we have with the Trump and the Trumpers. And so it's really up for me. I'm aware of it. This in my job that I do here and also in my, my spiritual life, that people, this ability for people to go into denial and support somebody. And again, it's one thing to support somebody who's done a bad thing, but it's your brother, it's your, family member, it's your good friend, and they've done something bad, and you're there for them because everybody does bad shit. It's one thing to like admit that what the person did, but still love them, still support them to the best of their ability. That's really being a higher level person where you can support somebody when they've done something really bad, right? Especially if the person is, and really only if the person is realizing they've done something bad, and whether it's coming out of the fact they got caught, which is the lowest thing, or if it's coming out of their own sense of guilt and shame, they're looking for redemption. Like if somebody's looking for redemption, if they're being a dick about it and still denying it, then you really can't support them. Like that's the wrong thing to do. You can't support them in their denial. But if they've owned up to what they've done, then it's kind of your duty to support people who are done something wrong. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the cult of personality, someone like Trump and somebody like Dodgy, who has support from a bunch of people, and even though they find out one bad thing after another, and the person just keeps on displaying themselves, they just won't wake up. They just won't, they won't do anything about it. And they just can't accept it. And it's hard for me to understand. I mean, it's really hard for me to understand. And so I want to contrast these two stories a little bit before we get into the other Trump stuff, right? So we all know about the overwhelming evidence that Trump is a piece of shit. Like, he says it and does it, and he acts it, he lives it, and he's not hiding it. And, he lies about it, but in a way that, like, it makes it even more, believable that he is a piece of shit. Like, his lies are not effective. But to these group of people that are so desperate and need somebody to agree with them and support their worldview, they've ignored all these things and pushed them back. And, we all know about that, right? And, the biggest thing is Epstein. Like, Epstein is so important to a lot of these people, the most sort of fringe Trump, right-wing fringe kind of, almost being truthers. I mean, right-wing truthers, the Cubies and these other people, that, the Pizzagate and all these things mattered so much to them. And a lot of these people are Christian, and they want to protect children and moms and women and, these things, and, for predators, and they want to see justice. I mean, more than anything else, they want to see people in this club that Trump belongs to be held accountable, like all the things that we know. And so these people, the drop-dead thing for them is Epstein. Now, in the Sahaj Marg meditation, coming out of the Indian culture, Dodgy has committed a lot of fraud, a lot of scams. He had a pharmacy, he had a series of pharmacies in America, and one of his sons became a CEO of a company that they were creating for online pharmaceutical equipment, getting your pharmaceuticals from delivery, right, based on, the sort of Amazon model. And, it was sort of taken off as a business, and they forged a bunch of documents. At least that's what it says, according to this subpoena from the FCC, which I've talked about, that his son has been indicted in America for getting $170 million of investment money based in faulty information they gave to their investors. So that's like hanging out there. There's the Brighter Mind scam, where they say that kids can smell colors and they can rearrange their senses based in, a bullshit scam that's been already exposed multiple times in different forms in India, but still they're able to, get people to buy into it. Goofy fucking shit. Like, they have people in the audience rubbing their bellies and patting their heads, but they said that it doesn't work for you as an adult. Only kids can do it, because kids will play along with it, right? They think it's kind of like a game, and they'll peek through the blindfold, all this bullshit. And I've talked about many of these things before. But in the spiritual culture and the guru-dom culture in India, there's nothing worse than blaspheming your spiritual master. I mean, it's, the equivalent to a reverend or priest or somebody, or the Pope, smearing Jesus, right? Or, his the guy that, whatever was his, teacher, guru. I mean, more relevant. It's like when the disciples turned on Jesus. But it's even more so in India. They have such respect for elders in their country, elders, their parents, and you just don't slam your parents. You just don't talk back to them. I mean, there's, and again, it's the culture is being modernized. But traditionally, you just don't do that. Like, you just, one of the things that Dodgy always says is respected elders. Like, he says that when he, begins to speak, or used to. He's gotten older himself, but like, elders and respecting the elders is such a big thing. Respecting your teachers. Chargy would talk about how American kids will call their teacher by a first name, like shit that's the Indian culture can't even understand, right? Hey, teach, like he would say something like that, which of course, that's dated. But, America, we don't have much respect for authority. And the master culture, and I've always had problems with authority. I don't know if it's a problem with authority. I don't know if it's a problem with the trust, but it's also that I learn better on my own. Like, I learn better on doing my own thing and research than I do being taught. So I mean, I can be taught, but it's not, it's just my learning style, whatever. But I certainly had trouble with the guru culture, the idea of a master. I mean, all this stuff that people would say. calling somebody master has so many negative connotations in the American experience, right? But I would never have done what Dodgy's done. Like, so Dodgy's taken his master, his birthday celebration right now, and he's basically said all kinds of negative shit, canceled his birthday, erased all of his great works, and then is just making a mockery of the whole thing. And the only credibility he has, because he's a dumbass with a fucking not very many good qualities. He was spiritual when I knew him before this all happened. Like he was into Sahaj Marg and he was good at it. But he was never as good as Chargy. Chargy was just this epic person with all these abilities and just somebody functioning at a high level. And Dodgy would never live up to what Chargy had accomplished as a person or as a spiritual person. He didn't have greatness in him. Like Dodgy has no greatness in him. But the way he's treated him is just like it's a complete deal breaker and a no in the Indian culture. And yet these people can't walk away from it. They just fucking can't. It's I've looked at this with Trump and like just how much evidence you need. Trump saying you could shoot someone in the face at Fifth Avenue. And it's a phenomena that I'm trying to understand. But I mean, it's so hard to understand. It makes people look so stupid and shitty that they won't bail on stuff. And sometimes they actually know the person's a piece of shit, which I know they do know about Dodgy. And I do know the Trumpers on some level know that Trump's a piece of shit, but they won't admit it because they don't want to give up on whatever they're doing, right? And, I've been somebody who's been able to deal with things like that because, the truth is the truth. And you can't, when you deny it, it hurts you in every possible way, most importantly spiritually, but every other way as well. And when God is showing you something and you refuse to see it, it's a fucked up thing to do. Like when God keeps on shoving something in your face and your soul does, or your experience, and you refuse to see it, and you keep on, locked into something, that's where all disastrous things happen. When you're being warned about something, you're being shown something, and you just deny reality, you deny God, what God is saying to you. You ignore it, and you just go do what you're going to do anyway. I mean, something that Trump does and the Trumpers do, and something that Dodgy does and his followers do. And, disaster comes from when you ignore God. And that's what's happening here. This is about ignoring the reality we see in front of us. And, of course, politicians and all these people, they ignore God's warnings all the time. Left, right, corporations, all of them. The people that run the system, they're being warned like the rest of us. You can see the fucking warnings. You can see where we're headed. And they just refuse to fucking acknowledge it. So anyways, I just want to start the video off here. I'm going to add this to my Journey series and also to the voiceovers I'm doing on the Gratefullness Meditation channel. So for those of you who don't know, let me just say this real quick because there's something funny that happened. I realized I wasn't receiving this energy, this transmission, and, I wasn't having the good experiences like I was having before. So I, realized I needed to go do something else and just connect directly to the source. And that was really helpful. And then there are some people who started Heartfulness because of me. And I was like, I had to tell them what I had discovered. And they also struggled. And so they started doing this thing called Gratefullness Meditation, which is just the old Sahaj Marg system with a different name and, videos I put together. And it's been really doing well, and I've been really grateful for it. And the gatherings and the meditations have gotten better and better, and my condition has gotten better and better, and I'm really psyched about it. The whole thing's been great, right? And, I don't like to pay attention to what Dodgy's doing because I know he's a piece of shit. And, I talk about this all the time. There's no reason to go down the rabbit hole. You're never going to expose anything that isn't, and again, these things can't be, you can bring it into the light, but people won't refuse to see them, and it's not my job to do that. But I did check up on to see how he, he pretended to channel Babaji, the second master, and there's 4 masters, and he got rid of the Babaji's and Chargy's birthday gatherings. And now he's having goofy fucking weird shit that's money-making scams and things at this big ashram. But it's not working because nobody likes the guy. He's not interesting. He can't compel people to, whatever. It's a failure. But he had this gathering, and it's supposed to be about celebrating Chargy's life. Like in the master-guru relationship, there's this element of celebrating the master. Like Jesus' disciples, they all wrote scripture about Jesus. They had their account of Jesus' teachings. And this is them celebrating Jesus' great work, right? And as a disciple, you want to, somebody's helped you evolve spiritually and you love them and you feel grateful for them, a teacher, and you want to promote some of their, you want to show the world how great they are. And that's, these birthday gatherings are supposed to be about that, celebrating Chargy's works. And Daji scrubbed all of Chargy's literature. They're not republishing it. Chargy has more talks and books and things and DVDs and, all these videos and things. Then all the, now Daji has a lot of videos because of YouTube, but, Chargy produced all this amazing work. And Daji wants to be a best-selling author like a Deepak Chopra, and he sucks. His books suck. They're childish. He can't even write his own books. They're all ghostwritten. Like he's just a fucking putz and a moron, right? And so, so they're celebrating this birthday. They don't really even mention Chargy at all. They make it a one-day gathering instead of a 3-day gathering. And they talk about trees, and they release goofy books in different languages that are just dodgy shit and got nothing to do with Chargy. And then they rolled out this guy to talk about diabetes for like an hour and a half, which, like people who are familiar with the system, you just, like, no one wants to sit there and listen to somebody talk about diabetes when it's supposed to be about a spiritual gathering. And so, after a while, it just gets stupid. And he's, blatantly stupid. And anybody who was familiar with the gatherings and the system before and knew Chargy, and many of these people said they loved Chargy, and they would weep when they have to leave him, when he would, visit a country, and when he leave, or they'd visit the ashram and they had to leave, they would weep and they would say how much it hurts and how much they loved him and all these things. And this guy's just throwing him under the fucking bus, and they're all just, just kowtowing to him and allowing him to do it. And it's like despicable. It's like so hard to look at. But anyways, so there it is. Let me wrap this one up here, and I'll get to my regular stuff on my regular channel, and then other things on, the Journey series and the Gratefulness meditation channel. Okay, so those were just some voiceovers that I felt like were important here and elsewhere on my Journey series. But I'm going to wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's paramount, definitely important for the Apocalaughs and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.